and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
I'm Marc, you're Marcus. Welcome in once again.
Yeah.
We're going to break down some soccer news.
Live.
Live, yeah. And, you know, sometimes live isn't always perfect, but
Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect, and a lot of imperfections in the soccer world this week. Let's start with the Champions League. We wanted to talk about the Premier League in the Champions League because they're playing very well.
Yeah, finally.
Maybe the only team that not quite playing so well is Liverpool, but they have 2 draws, so can still kind of bounce back and continue to play well. But yeah, like you just said, they haven't played well in the Champions League for several years now. Chelsea won in 2012. That was their last winner.
Yeah.
But we aren't really even just talking about winning the tournament. We're talking about just overall performance. They've been losing to La Liga and to the Bundesliga and losing to Juventus, I guess you'd say. But Chelsea beat Atletico yesterday. Big win for them. And Tottenham won at Dortmund in the first round of matches. And I don't think any Premier League team has lost a match so far through the first 2 matches.
The Premier League, maybe 10 years ago, they were not so much dominant in winning the competition, but they were always thereabouts in the semifinals, they were always competing for it, whether it was Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal got to the final once, Manchester United went through and they did fairly well. And then all of a sudden, between 2012, after Chelsea's victory, La Liga has been just dominating all of Europe.
Yeah.
And every week we hear about the Premier League being the greatest league in the world, blah, blah, blah. The Champions League is a competition between the top clubs in the world.
Yeah.
And that's different, you know, it's a completely different animal. And finally, I mean, you know, I was saying this even back then, that the best Premier League clubs were not the best in the world.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the marketing brochures and the Sky Sports commercials had to say about it. That might now be starting to change with some of the increased financial clout of the Premier League teams, and also they're just getting their act together.
Right.
I think that's more important.
I'm still thinking that Real Madrid is probably the best team in the world, but I think it's also, and then there's PSG's up there and Barcelona's up there, but it's also maybe Bayern Munich is slipping, as we saw, and sort of Man United, Man City are just stepping right into being back on top of the world. And it's just kind of, it fluctuates. And certain teams step up at certain times, but it's just been a while, probably more than we're used to, of the Premier League sort of having one of the top teams in the world. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I guess that's sort of the question I want to ask you is, can they maybe prove us wrong this season and make a deep run into the Champions League to at least a semifinal for one of the Premier League teams?
Short answer, no. But if it does happen, Chelsea or Manchester City will be the ones that do it, I think. No. Okay. Maybe that's just my opinion, or that's just kind of what Man United showed me in the UEFA Super Cup is that they were far away from being in the elite. I think they lost the game 2-0, maybe it was 2-1, but they were never really in it. Real Madrid, they were on another planet compared to Man United. Man City did well last season. I think they've been to the semifinal in recent season, and that ended a long drought. But when they got to that stage, it might have been the quarterfinal as well. Don't remember. But once they got to the stage where they went out, you could just tell they weren't at the level required to really compete for the Champions League.
Right. Elsewhere in the Champions League, because we kind of want to run through this.
Oh, yes, yes.
But PSG topped Bayern 3-0. I think I saw a tweet by you that this was the first real test for the Neymar PSG, which is totally right. And they passed the test with flying colors. What did we learn from PSG with the 3-0 victory over Bayern? Because it's also, how much do we... Bayern maybe sort of been in a little bit of disarray during this match, like in particular this match, considering that the coach was fired in the aftermath.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much should PSG just accelerate that process?
PSG, we learned they are for real.
Yeah.
That team, they're good now. I think they're unbeaten in 10 games this season competitively, and they can be scary good. Kylian Mbappe, Neymar, Edinson Cavani, if they all get along, there's been some friction in the locker room with Neymar and Cavani over penalty
Stealing
kicks.
a free kick,
and money. If they all get along, and that's the manager's job, is to just get everybody on the same page, this team is good enough to win the Champions League. I put them in a little mini bracket, pen them in straight to the semifinal. Bayern Munich, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago who the top 5 teams in the world, I would have included Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
PSG tore them apart.
Yeah.
It was their heaviest loss in 21 years in the Champions League.
Wow.
Carlo Ancelotti's worst loss as manager.
Yeah.
More on that later.
I saw that one.
PSG, they're not just good, scary good, that front three. And this team is built to win the Champions League now. Whether they do it, I guess that's what we'll have to watch for, but they're certainly capable.
It's scary to think that the group stage is, I don't want to say it's already an afterthought, but when Bayern Munich is supposed to be your toughest competition, you wipe them off the floor 3-0. Who knows by the time they play them next how Bayern Munich will be looking, because they still have a ton of talent on the roster.
Yes.
But
it was a weak Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Manuel Neuer is out with a foot injury. He's the best goalkeeper in the world. So if he's in there and he's playing well and he's sharp, do they lose 3-0?
1 or 2, but
I think his replacement made 2 mistakes on goals. I think I read that somewhere. But still, PSG, they were good, and they're only going to get better as they grow more familiar with each other.
Right. So I think, moving to the other side of the bench, I guess you'd say, Carlo Ancelotti sacked by Bayern Munich in the aftermath of this loss. They're in third in Bundesliga, only through 6 matches, but third place is not where they want to be. Just every year they get off to a fast start and try to separate themselves from the pack as quickly as possible, and they typically sort of do. So how will Bayern sort of move on? And was this sort of just maybe I don't want to say mutiny, but just the players were not buying into him anymore?
There have been just sort of reports trickling out about unrest in the dressing room. And we had talked about Bayern a couple weeks ago. It is a volatile environment to work because you're working with the stars. These are some of the biggest stars in the game. And you have to be a really deft manager to keep all the egos in line and get everybody just working together on the same page. There are 2 veterans, Arjen Robben, Frank Ribéry, Bild, German's biggest sports paper. They came out and said that these 2 guys had been leading what they described as a dressing room riot. And that was just in recent weeks.
Does that mean?
I don't know, but it means the manager is not in control of the dressing room. I think that's safe to say. We don't know the exacts, and we don't know how true that is, but just seeing that these are the 2, maybe arguably the 2 biggest voices in the dressing room. They've been there forever, but they're 32, 33, 34 years old. Ancelotti had been kind of phasing them out. They're too old to play every single game, or too old to play twice a week. Arjen Robben, he's injury prone. We can come out and say it. So it was just really interesting to see their reaction. Somebody asked Arjen Robben if this was after the loss, if the team still supports Ancelotti. He said, "I won't answer that question." That's an answer.
That's a no.
Yeah. If anybody ever asks, just say yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes.
Do I support Marcus? Yes.
Yeah, just say yes, whether or not you do. So I guess it's safe to say Ancelotti, he lost the dressing room.
Yeah.
They won the Bundesliga last year by 15 points, which is about 5 or 6 weeks before the season ends. It's a comfortable victory. But their last 6 or 7 games, they didn't play well. They dropped a lot of points. They could have, they were really good at the start of the season, and it all just kind of started to fall apart after Real Madrid beat them in the Champions League in the quarterfinals. So,
and it was sort of like they fell short of their goal.
Yeah, and that's, last week we talked about why is it so hard to work at Bayern? Well, you have to win the Champions League in order to have a successful
no small
season.
Task.
Yeah, that's how they define success. So between the end of last season and then the start of this season, Ancelotti is the fastest Bayern manager to lose his job in a season ever.
Really?
Yeah, he's Jupp Heynckes in 92, 93. I read this on Twitter. He was fired on October 4th after 7 or 8 games. I think it was 7 games. Ancelotti is also the first Bayern manager to be fired during Oktoberfest. Another fun fact for you.
My little brother was just at Oktoberfest.
In Germany.
He was in Germany.
Wow.
He had a ridiculous outfit on. I was jealous.
Did he make it back?
Yeah, he's back.
Okay,
he's back
good.
in the States.
All right.
Thank God.
Yeah.
We were worried there for a minute. But
it's Bayern Munich. Usually, they've come up under some criticism because people are calling it a panic move, or they're saying it's overly harsh. But the standards that this club has, they're astronomical.
It seems like the good move just because of the players' sort of public not supporting the coach, and if that is starting to happen, there's nothing that the coach can do at that point, and you can't replace all the players in a season. So it's just
and he had a problem with Thomas Muller last season, and maybe that might have carried into this season. Thomas Muller's like Mr. Bayern Munich right now, and you have to have your dressing room heavyweights backing you. Otherwise, things can spiral out of control really quick.
You mentioned sort of the aging roster.
Yeah.
I mean, if the next coach comes in and it wants to play the same players that Ancelotti was playing, I mean, are they just going to rebel against this guy too?
Eventually.
Yeah.
It depends on when their contracts are up, and if and when they're crossed.
Are there any replacements in mind yet?
Yes, there are 3 names that have popped up. Julian Nagelsmann, we spoke about him at Hoffenheim. He's only 30.
Right.
I have a feeling Bayern Munich.
He's not ready.
Won't go with him, even though Hoffenheim's playing really well this season. Thomas Tuchel, who was he was the coach at Borussia Dortmund until I think he left at the end of last season. He's been, he did very well at Dortmund, played in a good style. His name has been reported. Willy Sagnol, who is a former France international, former Bayern Munich player, he's taking over on the interim. He was Ancelotti's top assistant. But Tuchel and Nagelsmann, their names are out there. Other names I've seen, Xabi Alonso, who just retired last season, or at the end of last season, Spanish great, World Cup winner, European champion, won everything. He came out, it was sort of weird because I hadn't thought about him in recent months. And then all of a sudden he said, I have an announcement about my career change. And he said he's going into management. But he didn't say where. So I saw his name mooted as a potential replacement. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp is somebody that Bayern Munich would also look at. But yeah, he's so secure at Liverpool. Those are just some of the names, and Bayern Munich, that's a job that I'm sure they're getting flooded with resumes right now because it's one of the premier jobs in the sport.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that plays out. I mean, I would think that Bayern is going to bounce back as far as the Bundesliga goes, but with the Premier League playing so well as we mentioned, it's going to be tough for them to compete in Champions League, especially just like to bring in a new coach and then to probably going to have a new philosophy. And for the players to sort of bounce back, it's just tough to have. I mean, well, sometimes a coach comes in and then this whole season turns around.
Right. But Bayern Munich is built to win now.
Yeah.
They don't have the luxury of saying we can put this Champions League thing off for 3 years because a lot of their star players are either in their late 20s or early 30s. That window is closing. Fairly quickly. I think Robin and Ribéry might have 1 or 2 years left there. There's going to be a big turnover, so whoever comes in, you never get a lot of time at Bayern. That's not, he's not going to get 3 years to really change things up. You can't change the way the club plays too much because they educate players to play a certain way from age 7 or 8. It'll be interesting. You know, it's something. It's definitely become one of the biggest storylines in world soccer right now. Is one, what's going on at Bayern, and two, how do they fix it? I have a feeling they'll fix it fairly quickly because, you know, the club it's Bayern Munich. They're a juggernaut.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on the Bundesliga.
And if they don't, there'll be a lot to talk about, which is great.
Dortmund seems ready to try and challenge for the Bundesliga crown. We'll see if they can pull it off.
We'll see.
They're in first.
I doubt it, but.
Okay, well, let's move on. Well, do you have anything else that you want to chime
about
in?
Bayern?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think we don't want to beat a horse while it's down.
So USA Soccer.
Yeah.
A few different things. MLS played last night in a midweek. The Revolution lost 6-1. They just can't really seem to win on the road at all. They had an encouraging first performance under their new head coach over the weekend.
Beat Toronto.
Beat Toronto, MLS points leader. Then lost 6-1 at Orlando City after losing, I think, 7-0 at Atlanta in their last road match.
That was two ago. Then they lost to Kansas City in the meantime. So we crunched some numbers. Their last 3 road games, I think they've conceded 15 or 16 goals and scored 2. That's 5 a game. It's 5 a game.
I don't think I've ever seen such a difference in any sport between how well a team can play at home, beating the top team in the league, and how poorly they can play on the road. And like you always compare those numbers, and you look, and it's like, okay, maybe the record's 5 or 6, maybe 10 games better at home over the course of a season. But this is just like literally opposite ends of how, like, I mean, if you just the home record, they're one of the top, like very high up in MLS. Road record, they're literally the worst team.
Yeah. I mean, inconsistency is a hallmark of a, at best, mediocre but often bad team.
Yeah.
And this Revolution team right now is bad. And the worst part about it is that they're playing worse than the sum of their parts. There's talent on the team. There's a number of good players, a lot of MLS experience. Some of them have been to MLS Cup, but it's just not gelling. There's something wrong there. And I think that loss last night, 6-1, I think that's going to make it difficult for Tom Sohm, the interim coach, to take that interim tag off his name. Difficult, maybe impossible.
Yeah, so an interesting offseason ahead for the Revs.
Certainly, yeah.
But so next week, USA Soccer men's national team plays their final 2 World Cup qualifiers, and head coach Bruce Arena came out and said we shouldn't expect much change to the roster from what we've seen in the last qualifying, like, you know, back in September and even before then. I don't think this is unexpected because USA still needs to get points to qualify, but it is a little disappointing because there are a lot of different players that maybe we could, if we were in a better position in World Cup qualifying, could play them in a very good and competitive match, get a good look at them, and then maybe include them in World Cup roster considerations. Now, you don't get that game experience, and all you're going to have is sort of training camp situations, assuming you qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah.
I don't know, just so...
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Why did he come out and say this, though?
You're right. I think it's just to quell any U.S. soccer Twitter, let's call it, but the general U.S. soccer public and fandom is prone to overreaction and wild swings of emotion, whether it's, you know, on the we're going to win the World Cup side or we're the worst soccer country on earth side.
Right.
I think he's doing that to keep everything calm after last month's loss to Costa Rica, draw in Honduras. They are, you know, there aren't these unknown players that are suddenly going to turn the United States into a struggling team, or turn them from a struggling team into world beaters. They're just not. They're not out there. That
it has to be the
of.
guys that we know.
Yeah. You know, but you have to spare a thought and feel a little sympathy for those players who are
On the fringe.
trying their best, and they're either on the fringe or just outside the bubble, trying to break into that, because playing in a World Cup, of course, is the dream of every soccer player.
Yeah.
You know, from the day you're born, you want to play in the World Cup, and these are just limiting the opportunities for them to do that.
Yeah.
I don't expect Arena to turn the roster over, assuming they qualify, to turn the roster over big time and then, you know, build a whole new team between January and June.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get the feeling that we're stuck with what we have for.
I think. Well, the thing is, he said, like, we don't have the luxury. I think he's used the word luxury.
Yeah.
And I mean, I agree. It's just sort of disappointing when you have some really like talented young players, like Weston McKennie comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And this, if we were in, say, the position that Mexico is in, and the position that the United States was in leading into the 2014 World Cup, is you could bring in Weston McKennie and just start him alongside, you know, some bona fide USA starters, just see how he fits in. And if he plays very well, by the time the World Cup rolls around, maybe you have this nice weapon off the bench, or that could even start if the scenario was right against certain teams in the group stage. And now it's just kind of like, we're just not going to know. And we've put ourselves in that position to have to scramble at the end of qualifying to hopefully qualify. And then by the time the actual World Cup rolls around, you know, we just know what we have with our veterans, and we don't really know much about our young players.
Not much time for experimentation,
Yeah.
and you know, but maybe that puts the onus on them to really improve dramatically if they want a shot at playing in Russia next summer. You know, it's not young players usually. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, or you know, it's fits and starts their development.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of puts pressure on them to really spike and become big players now, if they want to go to Russia.
Right. Well, I keep mentioning Weston McKennie, but it's just, I've been sort of doing a little bit of research on him.
Mm-hmm.
He signed a contract extension with Schalke for a few more years, and I believe he started their last 2 matches.
Something like that. Yeah, he was.
So it seems like he is on the rise, which is why I'm sort of disappointed that when we come to this cycle, or this final stage of qualifying, that we're in such a tough position and really need results.
Yeah. But is he going to, you know, lead the United States out of the group stage?
No.
He's a player that could come in and be number 20 on the roster out of 23 or something like that.
I think I just sort of have this vision of just sort of a future of USA soccer, because the
present is that difficult for you to endure.
It's just, you know, I've been watching these guys for so long, and you can sort of see the end of their time as the men's national team guys, and just what they've accomplished as a whole is sort of a letdown as far as just within CONCACAF. And you know, I sort of thinking, it's like, okay, they won the Gold Cup this year, but there's been a lot of Gold Cup disappointments over the years.
Yeah.
And just the Hex, you know, just has been so difficult this year. It's just kind of, I don't know. I'm looking to the future.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's, you know, there's a number of key players that are now over the age of 30.
Yeah.
And I think their legacy will probably be defined in Russia. Should they not get to Russia, that is their epitaph right there.
Okay, anything else from USA Soccer or the MLS that you noticed this past week or are looking for, and as sort of the stretch run comes down and we get ready for the MLS playoffs?
People have been asking me if there are protests during the national anthem in soccer. There are. It happened in the few players in the National Women's Soccer League stayed in the locker room during the national anthem. They didn't come out and say why, but it was taken as part of the larger protest against police brutality and racial injustice. Bruce Arena touched on it just the other day. He said 2 things came to mind. 1, he said he thinks they're appropriate, and 2, he doesn't expect any U.S. players to kneel during the anthem.
Qualifiers.
United States, after Megan Rapinoe did so last year in 2016, she was the first non-NFL player to kneel during the national anthem. They put a rule in saying that all players must stand up during the anthem. So Bruce Arena said he doesn't expect any U.S. players to. I don't either. MLS put out a statement saying players the anthem is a very important moment, and the league has done so since 1996. But they also said the players have a right to protest.
Right.
The Players Union put a statement out that was it had a little more teeth to it, saying players are citizens and they have free speech rights and they can exercise them as they see fit, and the Players Union will support them however so. So the hot button issue in sports has come to soccer in the U.S. And I'll really be watching for it closely during the U.S. games, because these are the most visible moments in and around U.S. soccer, these World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, I think we'll see if any players do that, but I would also say that, not that we want to talk about the NFL too much, but the NFL seemed to collectively as a league. I just think sort of behind the scenes, a lot of players were talking to each other across teams and saying, we want this to be sort of the biggest week that we all get together and make a message sort of as a league and as a players all together. And I wonder how many NFL players will be kneeling this weekend and going forward. And I just because it was so widespread last week,
right?
It almost makes me feel like last week was when they really wanted to send the message, and now they sort of want to move on. And people will still be kneeling, and it won't just happen in the NFL. It'll happen across all major sports. But I wonder
in baseball last Saturday. Bruce Maxwell from the Oakland A's. Last weekend was an inflection point where it became much bigger than Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
And it spread to now we're talking about NFL, NBA protests. Now we're talking about NHL players possibly. I'm expecting this weekend it'll be something will happen and we'll be on it.
Yeah. Okay, so moving away from USA Soccer to the top matches of the weekend. Across Europe, there's a couple of matches that we're really honing in on. First one is Chelsea versus Manchester City. That'll be on Saturday,
12:30 Eastern time.
So Manchester City is tied with Man United for top of Premier League. You brought this. You really wanted to talk about this match. So which one? What do you?
It is it's the defending champion against probably the leading contender to take their crown, or one of them. Man United, Man City are tied, but I look at Man City as being a step ahead right now of Man United, regardless of what the table might say, due to their Champions League pedigree and where they've been in recent years. And Chelsea, I thought they would be, after their loss on their opening weekend, I tried to bury them.
They refused.
I really thought with Diego Costa, that whole saga looming, I thought it was really going to be problematic for Chelsea. And Eden Hazard, Hazard is back. Costa is gone. They officially sold him to Atletico Madrid.
Right.
Props to Antonio Conte for
keeping it all together.
Managing his way right out of, I just saw minefields and pitfalls everywhere.
Icebergs.
And he's dodged them all. And Chelsea, they're in third, good position, 13 points. This is Clash of the Titans in the Premier League. Every so often, big teams meet and the world watches. This is going to be one of those games. Let's say 400 million viewers, I would expect worldwide, maybe more. As for a prediction, I don't know. Where is it?
I don't know if we have to predict it.
I'm not going to. I don't know the details too closely, but by the time Saturday afternoon rolls around, I'll have my popcorn ready.
So that's definitely the match of the weekend. Another one that I picked out is Roma at AC Milan. The reason I picked this out is because the Serie A is sort of in a renaissance. There's a lot more competitive this year. I think Juventus is still clearly the top team, but sort of 2 through 6, you don't really know where any of these teams are going to end up. Right now, Roma and Milan are tied for 5th on 12 points.
Okay.
But it's all very tight, so the winner could move right into the top 4.
And this is at San Siro.
Yeah, at the San Siro. So it's just sort of very interesting to see how these two will play against each other and who maybe will sort of separate themselves as the Serie A sort of rolls on and we go into the first.
Yeah,
coming
into the game, I would have thought Roma. Well, 2 things about this game too. Coming into the season, I would have put Roma ahead of AC Milan. The AC Milan's been lost in the wilderness for 3 or 4 years now. Yeah, we're starting to find out. This is one of those games that we're going to find out, is AC Milan back, or is this just more? Are they living on past glories as they've done?
So Roma has won, I think, their last 4 matches, all competitions.
Okay.
But Milan has stumbled in their last 4 or 5 matches. I think they won their last one, and they actually play today in Europa League, but I think they dropped one to Sampdoria,
right?
Which is not such a great loss. But I mean, Sampdoria is okay, but you know, if you want to be competing for Champions League spots, you probably need to beat them.
Sure. You know, when I was picking through Carlo Ancelotti's Bayern Munich carcass, I was thinking of, you know, what happens next with him. Well, one of the things I saw was that he's been linked with a return to AC Milan, who he won, I think, 1 Champions League with them, and I don't remember which year, but you know,
it'd be good for Serie A.
Yeah. Ancelotti's been globe-trotting for maybe the last 7 or 8 years of his career. You know, maybe he goes back to Italy and back to a club where there's finally some money again at AC Milan, and he can go there, maybe have some more stability, which he hasn't had since he's been, you know, working at Europe's top clubs.
Right.
So if Roma beats Milan at San Siro, you could see Ancelotti back there on Monday. You know, I'd be surprised if it happened, but you know, this sport never ceases to amaze.
I wouldn't hate if Roma accelerated that process as well.
Yeah.
But no, it's just sort of an exciting time for Serie A because it's been Juventus kind of alone at the top, Roma just trying to find answers to compete with them while sort of being on top of maybe the rest of the league. Now, we've talked about how Roma has taken a little bit of a step back just in sort of a roster shuffle with their new general manager or president of soccer operations, Calcio operations. But at the same time, AC Milan and Inter Milan have sort of just become great again, and Lazio is back, and it's going to be a very competitive year down the stretch.
We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Napoli, who have been...
Yeah, Napoli has also been right there with Roma, trying to figure out how to top Juventus.
I think Napoli might be on top right now or close. They started out very well.
I think they're tied with Juventus, actually.
Okay.
I think Juventus and Napoli are both 6-0, have won every match so far.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe in Serie A we might start to see, you know, once upon a time it was the haven of the superstar manager.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but Ancelotti goes back to Milan. Antonio Conte came out this week and said, Italy is my home and I won't be gone long. So, you know, he could return to Serie A. Maybe Claudio Ranieri will pop up. And,
ooh, Claudio.
Yeah, you know, he's not in the class of those guys.
No, he's not. But I mean, he's a veteran.
You know, right now England has the star managers, but you know, maybe Italy will, as their big teams start to come back up to prominence, maybe you'll see some of those names going there.
Just to let everybody know, Napoli is technically in first on goals for, or goal differential was 17. Juventus's goal differential is 15. And then it goes Inter in third, Lazio in fourth, Roma and Milan tied for fifth, and Sampdoria and Torino tied for seventh. So keep your eye on the Serie A.
Order is slowly being restored in Italy.
But yeah, so that's what to watch this weekend. You got a final word?
Not really.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you want to follow the podcast, there it is. NESN.com/podcast, YouTube.com/NESN, and iTunes/NESN. I got it. No SoundCloud.
No SoundCloud.
No SoundCloud because the bosses said so.
Okay.
But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.